Welcome back to Motion 24, your ultimate destination for the stories they don't want you to hear. Tonight, we're pulling back the curtain on a revelation so explosive, so chilling, it could destroy the Roloff legacy as we know it. For years, we've watched the drama at Roloff Farms, the family feuds, the heartbreaks, the business battles. But what we've uncovered tonight goes far beyond anything ever captured on camera. A secret insider report has just surfaced, detailing not only a devastating fire, but a cold, calculated deception and a betrayal so personal it might never be forgiven. The once iconic Kids Castle, a beloved landmark of childhood joy and family history, is gone, reduced to a pile of ash and twisted metal. Officially, it's being called a tragic accident, but our sources tell a darker story. A story of hidden motives, quiet resentment, and a deliberate act of destruction. And so, the question now hangs heavy in the air. Did Caryn Chandler set the fire to erase every last trace of Amy Roloff's legacy from the farm forever? This is Motion 24, and tonight, we reveal the truth they hoped would stay buried. Before we dive into the exclusive, heart-stopping details of this unfolding tragedy and the evidence that has been uncovered, I need you to do 3 things for us. First, hit that like button to show your support. Second, subscribe to Motion 24 and turn on all notifications so you don't miss a single update on this explosive story. And third, prepare yourself because the information we are about to share will change the way you see the future of Roloff Farms. To grasp the full weight of what has allegedly been done, we must first return to the heart of what that castle meant. It wasn't just a playset. It was a world unto itself. For over 20 years, that little fortress stood as more than wood, paint, and shingles. It was the beating heart of the Roloff family's story, a living, breathing piece of their shared soul. This was not merely a backdrop. It was the canvas on which Matt and Amy painted their dreams. Together, they built not just structures, but memories, tangible monuments to love, imagination, and family. The castle wasn't a prop. It was the stage of 1,000 childhood adventures, the silent witness to laughter echoing through pumpkin seasons, birthdays, and countless everyday moments that made millions fall in love with the Roloffs. It was the fortress where Zach and Jeremy fought their pretend battles, the fairy tale tower where Molly ruled as princess, the quiet haven where young Jacob found peace. For Matt, it was a symbol of boundless creativity, a promise fulfilled, proof that he could give his children a world unlike any other. For Amy, it was the view from her kitchen window, the heart of the home, a constant reminder of what she had built with her own hands and heart. The castle, the pirate ship, the whimsical bridges, these weren't toys. They were relics of the Roloff's golden era, physical expressions of a family once united in joy and purpose. They stood for Amy's nurturing spirit, Matt's imagination, and the childhood wonder they crafted together. And that's precisely where the story begins to darken, where what was once magical begins to feel almost haunted. Because when something that's sacred is altered, taken, or destroyed, it's not just the wood that breaks. It's the history, the legacy, and the love it carried. Insiders told Caryn Chandler that these buildings were more like ghosts of bygone eras than emblems of joy. There has been an ongoing struggle for legitimacy on the property between family and the public due to the long-term marriage. The history of Matt and Amy permeates every inch of that property. His ex-wife is the subject of every anecdote and landmark that Matt mentions. Caryn, according to our sources, has always felt like an outsider even in her own house, as if she were the second chapter and not the first. Particularly striking and readily apparent was the castle as a representation of the past. Amy and the family that Matt had before her were forever symbolized by the towering structure. It stood as a testament to a legacy she had nothing to do with making, and hence could never fully own. The idea of being an afterthought, of existing only in the minds of other people, is said to have festered. she saw as Matt's vision of a new magnificent house. Their house came to fruition, yet these potent artifacts from his previous life around it. A fresh start was what she sought. She dreamed of creating an heirloom-level future with Matt, one that would supersede their previous one. It was necessary to eliminate the most potent symbols of the past in order to do that. She has been rather forthright about her plans for the farm, and this brings us to her vision. Caryn has long advocated for the property to have a more commercial, profit-driven trajectory. She has mentioned the possibility of transforming it into an upscale location for weddings, glamping, or a more adult-oriented tourism attraction. All of these concepts have one thing in common, and that is the possibility of financial gain. They demand the destruction of everything that once made the farm a magical place for families. Elegant wedding pavilions and posh canvas tents had little room for the ancient, whimsical, childish buildings that shouted Matt and Amy's family. The castle was a literal and metaphorical roadblock. It stuck the farm in the past and prevented it from moving forward into the future she dreamed of. Rumor has it that her wrath turned into an unhealthy fixation, according to our sources. Destroying the castle was not a setback in her view. Rather, it was an essential first step toward realizing her vision for their fresh start. A fresh start necessitating the symbolic removal of Amy Roloff. The night of the fire was described as calm and ordinary by everyone. On the farm, it is a late moonless night. There in the main home were Matt and Caryn. After a long day of projects, Matt went to bed early since he was fatigued. But Caryn was wide awake. She would later explain to police and a distraught Matt that she had been up all night planning the finances for the approaching pumpkin season on her laptop. It was at this point in the middle of the night when she asserted seeing a window light flicker. She painted a terrifying picture of the moment flames started to lick up the side of the famous castle. Her voice quivered with terror and shock as she screamed for Matt, struggled to find her phone, and frantically dialed 911. Old, dry timber of the castle had already been consumed by the time the fire brigade reached the scene of the crime. They had exhausted all possible options. The fire was put out before it could spread to the adjacent barns, but the castle was destroyed in the process. A heap of blackened, smoking rubble and the shattered hearts of a family were the only things that remained of the beloved landmark when daylight came. As the sad but supportive partner, Caryn nailed it. While he peered at the ruins, a shell-shocked Matt was held by her. The youngsters who were so distressed called her, and she was the one who comforted them. She was the one who told everybody who would listen about the apparent reason. Unfortunately, an unanticipated incident. Her reasoning seemed reasonable, almost too reasonable. She adamantly stated, her voice betraying her sincere grief, that it was the outdated and defective wiring. Do you know the age of that building, my darling? Decades ago, you constructed it on your own. The wiring failed miserably. A potential flashpoint was there. From the outside looking in, the plot made sense. Despite its endearing qualities, Matt's early efforts lacked the coding standards of today. Something might have short-circuited over the years due to the wet Oregon weather. There was no need to ask any follow-up questions or assign any blame because the explanation was clear and concise. She wanted everyone to think it was a tragedy, and that was her point. While the smoke was still rising from the ashes, the initial weaknesses in her account started to emerge right after it happened. What she said, rather than her actions, exposed her deceit according to our insider. She allegedly said the remarks that would subsequently become the basis of Matt's suspicion as she comforted a cold and sad Matt. Her tone changed as she started to speak. My darling, I understand that you and I both feel devastated by this horrible incident. She went from grieving to seeing an opportunity so quickly that it was startling. But maybe it's a blessing in disguise. Now we have a clean slate. We can build something new in its place. Something that represents us. Matt had hardly begun to comprehend the magnitude of his loss when Caryn entered the planning phase. Supposedly, within hours, She began gushing about the place where the castle formerly stood as the ideal spot for a new wedding pavilion or a high-end glamping retreat. She described it as an opportunity to update and progress, to build a symbol of a new age for the farm. She spoke as if attempting to locate a silver lining in a dark cloud, but to a heartbroken Matt, her words were initially just noise. The emotion behind them, however, started to feel strange as the first shock wore off. It was too sudden, too shrewd, and too chilly. Instead of lamenting the passing of a treasured possession, she was eagerly pursuing a property investment possibility. The initial impulse to replace, to reconstruct his children's past using one of her business ventures, sows the first tiny seed of uncertainty in Matt's head. His mind began to wander back to the night before. Only Caryn is awake. Caryn, the one who had the easy, quick answer. Caryn, the one who perceived a blessing rather than a tragedy. The idea that defective wiring was to blame began to sound less like a reasonable explanation and more like a scripted response. The rest of the Roloff family's reaction was one of utter, unfiltered grief. Reportedly, Zach and Jeremy were devastated upon hearing the news. That castle was a part of their childhood. It served as the background for their whole youth. They felt as though they were losing a part of themselves and their history with its demolition. Supposedly, Amy was completely devastated. The once recognizable turret that peered over the treetops was now invisible from her home, which was only a short distance away. The house stood as a last testament to the family she and Matt had created. The dramatic end to her life as a farm girl was bookended by the bodily blow of its loss. In sharp contrast to Caryn's practical, future-oriented reaction, the children's sorrow was profound and individual. Matt did not miss this discrepancy. He was uneasy since he could see his children's real suffering in their eyes, while his fiancée's words conveyed manufactured positivity. The claim of defective wiring was more than simply a handy fiction for Matt Roloff, the builder, creator, and master of the farm. The quality of his work was devalued. Even though he sometimes skimps on quality, he is extremely careful to ensure that his buildings, particularly those for his children, are secure. His mind started wandering to the building site. He recalled personally managing the electricity wires. It was the heavy gauge, outdoor-rated wire that he recalled using. He recalled safeguarding it with specialized circuit breakers he had installed in the adjacent barn. It didn't seem natural that his work would spontaneously explode in such a disastrous manner. It seemed unlikely. In the midst of his anguish, a professional's question about the veracity of the account he was being told started to take root. He was familiar with both his own work and the castle, so he realized that the rapid destruction caused by the fire was probably not the result of a simple short circuit. In the early stages of an electrical fire, it may be small, smoldering, and smoke-filled. Based on the debris, this fire had been extremely hot and explosive from the start. A new, icy sensation, the hunger for answers, had joined the sadness, though. He couldn't simply accept the story of the terrible disaster, he determined. He needed first-hand evidence. As a bereaved parent and a builder familiar with every nail and board, he had to make his way through the ashes. How could this have transpired? That was the question he had to answer. Unaware that what he was about to discover would endanger his entire future, Matt Roloff embarked on a personal, wrenching investigation into the demise of a dream in the name of preserving any potential souvenirs. Amidst the ruins lay the truth, and he was hell-bent on unearthing it. The morning sun did little to alleviate the chilling fear that had taken root in Matt Roloff's bones as he stood on the brink of devastation. The air was heavy with the noxious aroma of wood that had burned, damp ash, and an additional substance that seemed chemically off. The location was more than simply an accident site. It seemed as if 30 years of memories had been brutally murdered there. Caryn's explanation about defective wiring resounded in his thoughts. But it was a weak justification in light of the complete destruction that had taken place. He worked as a framer. Fire and building were both familiar concepts to him, but the reality he was witnessing contradicted the narrative he had been told. Insurance companies and the fire department would do the formal investigation, but Matt was aware that they would miss what he had seen. They would be oblivious to the building's essence. The intricacies of its structure would be lost on them. For the sake of his family, Amy, his children, and the legacy that was now a jumble of shades of gray, he had to find out the truth. With each stride, his boots dug deeper into the muddy, parched earth. Even Caryn had attempted to intervene. "Matt, honey, don't," she had begged, her voice carrying an unearthly sense of desperation. She said, "It's too upsetting. There's nothing left to see. Let the cleanup crew handle it." However, her tone was more defensive than compassionate. With his nose tucked in, he had pushed past her delicately. On his own holy ground, he was now an investigator, not only a mourning patriarch. With a trained, analytical eye, he began at the boundary and scanned the rubble. Particularly in cases when the cause is suspected to be a short circuit in older wiring, there might be telltale signs of an electrical fire. It probably would begin in one particular spot, next to a power outlet or a junction box. Starting at that spot, it would radiate upward, leaving behind a distinctive V pattern on any remaining vertical surfaces. Damage would radiate outward from that one spot where the heat would be greatest. But Matt didn't perceive it that way. With soot-covered hands, he cautiously sorted through the debris and witnessed something incredibly unsettling. It was incorrect to char. It had too much uniformity and too much reach. There seemed to be more than one obvious starting point. He discovered spots at floor level close to the walls where the wood had been burned more deeply and badly than the wood directly above it. An ordinary electrical fire turned upside down. Pooling is the term used to describe this pattern in fire investigations. It suggests that a liquid was thrown or splattered onto the floor, lit, and then spread rapidly, causing the fire to burn intensely from the bottom up. The rapid and total destruction of the castle's foundation was explicable given that it had been engulfed in flames. A wall short circuit would have smoked and smoldered for at least an hour before completely engulfing the building. This inferno was unique. That had been a bomb. Hunger gripped me. Indifferent to the filth and the vile odor that lingered, he bowed low. A charred floor joist brushed against his fingertips. The wood had the marks of an intense fire, more scorching than what one would expect from a regular wood fire. Deep, rolling blisters that looked like alligator skin. As he continued to dig into the ash heap next to the main entrance, a distinct aroma, distinct from smoke, entered his nostrils. Although it was obscured by the massive amounts of water used to extinguish the fire, its presence could still be discerned. A chemical, oily odor, the specter of an accelerator. The odor was similar to that of lighter fluid or kerosene. It froze in his blood. No one should have been allowed inside the castle with that odor, which he recognized from his farm machinery and from lighting bonfires. Not a single thing in there required gasoline. Electric lights illuminated the wooden and plastic playthings. This odor was unfamiliar. An invader was to blame. It served as proof. Out of nowhere, Caryn reappeared, this time placing her hand on his shoulder. She said softly but firmly, "Matt, what are you doing? You're covered in soot. Come on, let's go inside. I'll make you some coffee." She wanted to distract him by yanking him away. As he spoke, his voice remained flat, and his gaze remained fixed on the burned wood fragment in his palm. "I'm just looking," he explained. Caryn sighed in frustration. "Something's not right." "Of course it's not right, honey. It all burned down." "You're torturing yourself." The fire marshal said it was probably the wiring. "It's over. We have to accept it and move on." Move on. That expression once more. Just hours after the incident, she had used the identical statement. Same longing to lay the groundwork for a fresh start, free from the weight of her past. She sounded less like a source of solace and more like she was trying desperately to sell him a tale, one that was falling apart right before his eyes. He got to his feet and shook his head. "No," he stated, his voice taking on a new level of impatience. "It's not over." It was his gut feeling that the wiring was deceiving. This was deliberate, down to the scent and the patterns of burns. It was an intentional act. Arson was committed. Who would do something so vile and intimately personal? It took too much time for the hideous idea to take shape in his head. For him, it was insufficient. Evidence was required. A sudden flash of memory flashed across his head. The surveillance camera. He had put it on the side of the large barn a few years ago in response to a series of small vandalisms that had occurred in the vicinity. A basic set of cameras at his workplace recorded to a hard drive. It wasn't a state-of-the-art system. One of the cameras, nevertheless, offered a clear, high-definition shot of the children's fortress. Everything would have been visible to it. It would have recorded the precise second the fire broke out. Either a spark from a wire or a shadowy figure would appear. In any case, it was true. A flood of relief engulfed him. This horror could be ended right this second if he wanted to. He would be able to release the sinister suspicion that had taken up residence in his spirit once the footage proved it had been an unfortunate accident. On the other side, it would confirm his darkest suspicions, and he could then turn over the proof to the authorities. With a look of bewilderment or maybe terror on her face, Caryn stood alone beside the ashes as he turned and strode purposefully toward the house. Entering his office with an air of superiority, he made a beeline for the concealed security DVR. Observing him from the doorway, Caryn accompanied him inside. "What are you seeking, Matt? What is the matter of such paramount importance?" she inquired, her voice slightly elevated and abrupt. "The security footage," he claimed, averting his gaze from her. With lightning speed, he glided across the keyboard, navigating the user interface of the machine. "The barn camera, it would have captured every moment," he said, seeing her growing uneasy behind him. Before she spoke, there was a pause. "Oh, that old thing," she said under her breath. She tried to undermine the evidence beforehand, but her attempt was awkward and obvious. "I'll be shocked if it was even working. You know how glitchy that system is." It strengthened his determination. He accessed the live video feeds. In the parking lot, camera 1, everything was okay. Clearly visible through camera 2 is the pumpkin patch. The castle was captured by camera 3, sometimes known as the barn camera. He slid through the events of the past, returning to the wee hours of the morning about 2 o'clock. On his way to the fire, he uncovered a time block. Pressing the play button, he held his breath. Completely null. There was static that was green and gray and pixelated all over the screen. A short-lived file corrupted error notice appeared in the corner. He made another click. Same outcome. The footage was flawless when he rewound the clock 1 hour earlier. 1 hour subsequent to the fire, he proceeded to scroll forward. Once again, the footage of the fire trucks and the aftermath is really stunning. Unfortunately, the critical 30 minutes preceding the fire's ignition had vanished into thin air, a digital black hole, an implausible coincidence. An arson investigation involving a fire in which the lone camera tape was degraded at the scene of the crime adds another layer of mystery. The chances were really enormous. There was no mistake. It was intentional. The whole thing was a hoax. With his breath taken away, he slouched back in his chair. Instead of the relief he had anticipated, a crushing sense of confidence that someone was playing him, that a dreadful truth was being concealed from him, supplanted it. Caryn said the word "see" from the threshold, her tone betraying her sincere empathy. "I warned you it was junk. It was just our luck. Oh, my darling, I'm really sorry. I know you were looking for answers." Her portrayal was impeccable, but Matt had stopped paying attention. From behind the curtain, he could make out the puppeteer. A pang of hopelessness washed over him for an instant. The video footage had already vanished, and the physical evidence was only circumstantial. His word and intuition were at odds with her convincing tale. Subsequently, however, an alternative region of his brain, one that was familiar with systems and processes and had experience constructing a company from scratch, emerged. Though the video file may have disappeared, the system still has a copy. We record every single action, click, and instruction. It's like leaving an indelible digital footprint, like a trail of breadcrumbs. He had his doubts about Caryn's ability to clean the system's underlying activity logs, even though she might be able to remove a file. He started traveling to the administrative back end of the system, a part of the software he knew she wouldn't be aware existed, and minimized the viewing window. With a hint of real fear slipping in, Caryn questioned, "What are you doing now, Matt?" Her voice had lost its sympathetic quality. With his mumbled explanation, "Just checking the system integrity," he remained fixated on the screen. He lied and said, "Making sure the hard drive isn't failing." He used this reassuring technical term to keep her away while he tried to reveal the truth. The access logs were located by him. For the average user, it just seemed like a sea of text with a seemingly endless stream of timestamps and instructions. However, for Matt, it seemed like a tale just waiting to be told. He used the date and time filters to narrow down the record to just the minutes leading up to the 911 call. With his pulse racing, he continued scrolling until he came across it. It only took one line of code to put everything on pause. It is now 2:17:42 a.m. present. Administrator, removed from the list. The file being targeted is cam3_barn_020000230_amib4. Everyone understood the order. There was no corruption in the file. It had been eliminated by hand, on purpose. The seconds ticked by with a shiver. Caryn stated she had panicked and dialed 911 around 4 minutes later. 4 minutes. I managed to escape the fire, go on my computer, erase all evidence, and then pretend to be a terrified witness by the time I got the phone. However, the record did contain one last incriminating detail: assault evidence. The IP address that had issued the command was displayed next to it. One way to identify a device on a network is with its IP address. His office computer's IP address was known to him. It wasn't this. He drew up the settings for his home Wi-Fi router in a flash and opened a new window. He examined the inventory of devices that were currently linked. Along with his phone and office computer, there was a laptop labeled Caryn's MacBook Pro. Next to the name, you could see the IP address that the laptop was now given. He shifted his gaze between the security system log and the router log. The figures were identical. There had been no outside hacker who gave the order to erase the file's proof. This was not the result of an accidental glitch. It originated from Caryn's laptop, which was located inside the main home and connected to the same Wi-Fi network they were both using at the time. Something escaped Matt's lungs. A haze appeared on the screen before him. At this point, it was no longer suspected. I didn't just get this feeling. This shone beyond a reasonable doubt. An electronic receipt for the deepest betrayal he had ever experienced. Now, with terrifying clarity, he could see the whole chain of events. In the middle of the night, Caryn crept out of the house, her insecurities and desire to destroy Amy's legacy driving her. The castle stood as a symbol of her adversary, so she went there and sprayed it with accelerant. Standing back to watch the emblem of his family's heritage burn against the backdrop of the night sky, she had set it ablaze. After a composed return to the house, she retrieved her laptop and, with a few clicks, deleted the sole witness to her crime. She woke him up with cries only after she had covered her traces. She didn't dial 911 till after that. Not only was her outward display of sadness and shock an act, but it was also strategically planned. All of her reassuring statements, her promotion of the story of the broken wiring, and her quick change to creating something new were components of a complex and brutal deceit. An almost paralyzing wrath washed over him, pure and icy. He had protected this woman from his own children because she was trustworthy, loving, and vulnerable. In the span of a single night, she had systematically and ruthlessly ruined the most holy aspect of his history, and he had intended to spend the remainder of his life with her. What she had done was burning his children's childhood, not only destroy a play structure. His marriage to Amy was in ruins because she spat on it. In the end, her goal was to use the rubble to construct a bridal pavilion. The act's utter, unabashed egotism was shocking. Subtly disguised as a terrible accident, it was an act of emotional and personal abuse. He swiveled his chair to face the entrance, where she remained standing, observing him with a nervous smile playing on her lips. She remarked in an attempt to appear nonchalant, "Did you find anything interesting?" Matt remained silent. He merely indicated the screen. All over the crime, he pointed to the log file, the timestamp, and the IP address, which was like a digital fingerprint, her fingerprint. He finally met her gaze, and for the first time, he saw the insecure, merciless stranger residing in his home, not the supporting fiancé or the charming partner. He said, "Explain this, Caryn," in an alarmingly low voice that betrayed no emotion whatsoever. "Explain how, 4 minutes before you called 911, someone using your laptop deleted the only evidence of what really happened tonight. You didn't just get rid of an old building, you burned it. You burned down my children's history. You burned it all down because you couldn't stand it, because you were so desperate to erase Amy's memory that you were willing to set my entire world on fire. Tell me, was it worth it? Is your wedding pavilion worth all this?" The dispute had started. Matt Roloff saw in the stillness that surrounded them that the day of judgment had arrived, and that his life on the farm and his prospects for the future had just been destroyed. Plus, the arsonist was confronting him face to face. There was an eerie stillness in Matt's office that was louder than an explosion. Caryn's expression, which had been contorted into a mask of anxious worry just moments before, fell. It was a gradual process. The first thing that happened was that she looked at the damning evidence on the screen, and her eyes flashed with sheer, unmitigated terror. Second, an icy rage, like an animal about to be cornered. Last but not least, the desperate preparation of a skilled manipulator seeking a new trick, a performance, or a way out that might save the utterly hopeless. Matt expected her first line of defense to be denial when she eventually opened her mouth to speak, a flagrant rejection of any truth. "That's insane," she cried, and manipulated a brittle laugh that broke glass. "Not at all, Matt. An IP address? What on earth does that mean? You understand what technology is. The router must be having issues. There must have been a systemic issue. My laptop? I stayed in the living room the whole time. Do you think I'm a computer hacker capable of deleting security files?" She was having a hard time hiding the digital evidence beneath a facade of ignorance. But Matt didn't back down. This was something he had seen in her before, in smaller doses. The way she could subtly shift blame, rewrite a story, twist a tale. Now he was seeing the master at work, and for the first time, he wasn't buying it. "Don't play dumb with me, Caryn," he said in a low, threatening rumble. "A spreadsheet and a smile can win me over. But I'm not one of your corporate clients. I created this farm myself. I designed that security system myself. Furthermore, I am the one who knows full well that you are lying to me right now." He stood up, and their height difference, which was normally a simple feature of their existence, became a concrete representation of the power dynamic that had just been irrevocably altered. He was no longer the loyal, sometimes naive husband. He was the judge, and she was in the dock. When she realized that denial had failed, she attempted to weaponize his grief by gaslighting him and reversing the accusation. Her eyes flooded with crocodile tears. "How can you do this?" she exclaimed, her voice breaking with practiced grief. "How can you accuse me of anything so heinous? When the castle burns down and our hopes for the future are reduced to ashes, you're in here trying to find a way to blame me rather than weeping with me. Does Amy have a role? Is that what it is? You're so scared of letting her go and are so plagued by her that you'd rather believe I'm some kind of monster than admit it was a horrible accident. After everything I've done for you and this property, what do I get in return? A query? The performance was exceptional, a masterclass in emotional manipulation. A year ago, it would have been successful. Feeling guilty, he would have gathered her in a comforting embrace and apologized for his suspicion. But that's no longer the case. She was addressing a man who had died amid the ashes of the castle. "Stop it," Matt growled, his voice cutting through her performance like a surgeon's knife. "Just stop. Amy is unrelated to this. This isn't related to a bug. It's all about you. I found the burn patterns, Caryn. I can smell the accelerant. Your being awake wasn't a coincidence. You planned this. You stepped outside. You came back and tried to conceal your actions after ruining 30 years of my life. You stood there and consoled me while I cried, knowing that you were the one who struck the match. The only question I still have is why. When she was trapped in denial and gaslighting had failed, she finally lost it. But that was hardly an admission of guilt. It was an explosion of justification. The tears were sincere now, but they weren't tears of remorse. They were tears of self-pity. Because I had to, she cried as the well-constructed facade of the calm, capable wife crumbled. I got it done for us. Are you blind? I live on this farm every day, and I'm a ghost here. Matt and Amy did this. Matt and Amy built that applies to every building, tree, and story. That wasn't a playhouse, Matt. It was a temple to her. It looked at me through the kitchen window every morning, reminding me that I am the second wife, the replacement, and the woman who came after. I would never be better than a memory. I wanted us to have something, a future that isn't built on the rubble of your past. I wanted to leave our legacy, not be a footnote in yours. It was only a shabby, rotting building. It was dragging you back. We were unable to proceed because of that. And there was the truth. It's not an apology. It's a justification. An admission of self-interest rather than regret. Instead of witnessing the pain of a family, she saw a necessary deconstruction for her own goal. She hadn't done it to hurt him. She had done it for him and for them. In reality, it was the height of narcissistic dominance, a twisted, toxic display of affection. Matt stared at her, and the last of his affection for her cooled. He finally saw her for who she truly was. A woman so obsessed by her own insecurities that she was prepared to carry out a deeply painful deed and pass it off as a gift. He moved by her, exited the office, and opened the front door to let in the chilly night air. He didn't give her a glance. He said, "Get your things," in a hollow voice. "I want you out of this house tonight." Caryn fell silent in shock. "What?" "No, Matt. We can discuss this." She hurried after him and said, "We can fix this." "No," he answered, keeping his back to her. "Nothing has to be fixed. Memories cannot be unburned. You cannot deceive me. This cannot be reversed. You took a can of gasoline to a symbol of my family's affection that you saw. We don't fix things like that. That's it." With a final, unambiguous instruction, he left the door open and stepped out onto the porch. He heard the sounds of slamming drawers and muffled, irate screams as she rushed upstairs. After an hour, she descended with a luggage and towel. Her face was a jumble of anger and sorrow when she came to a stop at the door, spitting out, "You're making a huge mistake, Matt. You're passing up the future in favor of a heap of ash. You're picking her instead of me." At last, he turned to face her. With a whisper, "I'm choosing my children," he said. "I'm picking my past. I'm going with the truth. Something that's beyond your comprehension." After giving him a long look, she turned and ventured out into the night. The last, unmistakable sign that their love was over was the sound of her automobile starting and racing down the lengthy driveway. For what seemed like hours, Matt stood by himself on the porch, feeling the chill creeping into his bones. Behind him, the new fantasy home they had created together felt claustrophobic and unfriendly. It was contaminated. Her touch and vision were everywhere. There was a loneliness he had never experienced before, a sense of utter despair. In one night, he had lost both his past and his future. But when the pain subsided, a new emotion called resolve started to surface. He had been correct to do it. The most difficult phone call of his life now had to be made. With his fingers shaking a little, he took out his cell phone and browsed through his contacts. After locating Zach's name, he hit the call button. "What's going on, Dad?" "It's late," Zach replied in a drowsy tone. Matt inhaled deeply. "Zach, please pay close attention to what I have to say. Something has occurred." He described everything: the fire, his suspicions, the burn patterns, the odor, the first thought that it was an accident, and finally the digital evidence, the IP address, the deleted file, and the conflict. On the other end of the telephone, there was a long, startled stillness. "Are you telling me that Caryn did this, Dad? Hold on. Did she intentionally set the castle on fire?" There was a dreadful, dawning horror mixed with astonishment in Zach's voice. Matt responded, "Yes, son," as his voice cracked for the first time. "She did. She admitted it. She did it to remove your childhood memories and your mother's memory. Zach, she's gone. I threw her out." The Roloff youngsters were shocked by the news. Arriving at the property early in the morning, Zach and Tori were the first to pull up. There was only a bleak, mutual understanding, no lofty declarations. Zach just put his hand on his father's shoulder as he approached him. Together, father and son, they stood gazing at the burned-out area of ground where the memorial to their family's best years had once been. The news swiftly reached Jeremy, who was said to be furious and to have been violated deeply. His early years were spent in this stronghold, where he and his brother had developed a close relationship. This was an attack on his identity, not just a building, in his opinion. According to insiders, Jacob was appalled but not totally shocked at the extent of the dysfunction, while Molly was devastated. Naturally, Amy's response was the most significant. Zach had told her the news. At first, she didn't cry. Rather, a deep and exhausting melancholy descended upon her. She had thought for years that Caryn was systematically erasing her from the farm, changing her kitchen, renovating her rooms, and taking up her position during pumpkin season had been death by 1,000 cuts. Although she had been accused of being resentful and envious for expressing her unease, she had always intuitively understood that Caryn's objective was to replace. This was the last bloody evidence. It was verified by fire and ash and was no longer merely a sensation. It was a strange and agonizing vindication. She had always been correct. Amy stood on the porch of her own house that night, gazing at the farm across the fields. The castle's recognizable turret on the horizon was no longer visible to her. The insecurities of another woman stole a piece of her in the night, and it was gone forever. She was deeply saddened for her children, whose physical connection to their childhood had been so brutally broken. She also experienced a peculiar, complex melancholy for Matt. He had allowed the arsonist into his house, unaware that she intended to burn it down and construct her own kingdom on top. Because he was so naive and desperate for a fresh start, a little party was held on the farm a few days later. Jeremy, Matt, Zach, and their families. As a family, rather than as a television team, they walked to the fire site. As a silent reminder of their common past, they gathered in a circle around the ashes. The damage, which was meant to rip apart the family's history, had an unexpected result. The core of the Roloff family had been reunited as a result, bound together by their shared sorrow and silent resolve to preserve what remained. Standing on the site where he and their mother had constructed a dream, Matt gazed at his sons and grandchildren. He was aware that Caryn was mistaken. Burning down a structure won't erase a heritage. A legacy isn't constructed of wood and nails. Rather, it's made up of the individuals who survive a fire, remember, and make a commitment to rebuild. The question now hanging in the Oregon air was a heavy one. What comes next? Will Matt press charges, turning a family drama into a criminal case? Or will the punishment be Caryn's permanent exile from the world she tried so hard to conquer? And what will rise from these ashes? A new monument to the past? Or will the ground remain scorched, a permanent scar reminding them of the ultimate betrayal? The legacy of Roloff Farms is more uncertain than ever, and we will be here to bring you every single development in this shocking, ongoing story. Make sure you are subscribed, because you will not want to miss what happens next. LPBW tensions rise. Amy Roloff denies accusations from Matt. And Matt Roloff's kids finally go back to farm. Matt and Amy Roloff lock horns in sneak peek. And Matt Roloff shares critical pumpkin season 2025 update. I will explain everything. According to Little People Big World spoilers for season 25, Amy and Matt Roloff are at odds once more. According to teasers, if Amy and Matt spend enough time together in close proximity after all these years, something always goes wrong. And this is another difficult moment for the ex-couples. People, huge world exes recently, Matt Roloff and Amy Roloff have been friendly. Despite their divorce, they continue to play a significant role in each other's lives. They frequently spend time together, accompanied by Chris Marek and Caryn Chandler, as well as their shared children and grandchildren. Even with the scenes from Little People, Big World today, it's clear that Matt and Amy will eventually clash over something. They both desire to be in charge and assign chores to others because of their personalities. Things between them finally come to a head, and with them, it becomes an issue of having too many cooks in the kitchen. According to spoilers for this week's episode of Little People, Big World, there is tension from the beginning as Amy and Matt Roloff clash once more. Teasers reveal that Matt is very irritated at your wife, referring to Amy to Chris Marek. TLC doesn't reveal exactly what happens to cause this. But one thing is certain, in future scenarios, you can definitely use a knife to break the tension. In any case, Matt Roloff obviously holds Amy accountable for something, and viewers will need to watch this week's show to learn the full details. Using Roloff Farms as the venue, Matt Roloff, Amy Roloff, Chris Marek, and Caryn Chandler are collaborating this season to organize a benefit. In order to prepare, organize, and carry out this significant event, all four of them are collaborating, and their claws are undoubtedly out. During the ongoing turmoil between these ex-partners, Amy Roloff states in Little People, Big World spoilers that she wants to crystal clear that she didn't do whatever it was that Matt Roloff accused her of. Caryn Chandler is cautious about interfering with Matt and Amy's relationship in future moments. Caryn states that she does not wish to participate in any dispute that may be occurring. These kinds of circumstances serve as a reminder to Little People, Big World viewers of why Amy and Matt Roloff's relationship didn't last. Even after all these years, there will still be some awkward situations and dramatic moments because one person still has a grudge and the other still has a chip on their shoulder. LPBW Matt Roloff's kids finally go back to farm. Recently, Matt Roloff's family returned to Roloff Farms amid all the Little People, Big World commotion surrounding the farm. In light of the intense family conflict, is this a sincere attempt at reconciliation? For a while, TLC exploited the Roloff Farms plot in Little People, Big World sequences. Zach and Jeremy Roloff initially intended to purchase a share of the family farm. In addition to keeping things inside the family, this would require a significant financial outlay. As it happens, Matt Roloff made the decision to transform that area of the property into short-term rentals. Even though Zach and Jeremy Roloff are his kids, Matt didn't automatically give them a hefty family discount. Rather, he made a calculated financial decision that ultimately caused his sons to feel hurt. The controversy surrounding Roloff Farms and its aftermath was a major plot point for TLC, as viewers of Little People, Big World will recall. Because of the severe split it caused between Zach Roloff and his father, Matt Roloff, Zach and Tori moved to Battleground, Washington. Despite the last season of the show, Zach Roloff remained resentful of all that transpired. It was clear that angry feelings persisted despite Matt and Caryn Chandler's claims that they had attempted to create an olive branch. For many fans of Little People, Big World, Zach, and Tori Roloff's departure from the program following season 25 was a clear jab at Matt Roloff. According to the latest rumors about Little People, Big World, Jeremy Roloff and his family were recently at Roloff Farms. This time of year is all about pumpkin season, which draws tourists each year. Jeremy, Audrey, and their kids were also there this year. This is encouraging for mending the family division caused by the botched farm deal because Jeremy Roloff and his family are spending time on Roloff Farms. Even though Tori and Zach Roloff still appear to be at odds, the fact that Jeremy and his family visited the farm is encouraging that the family's division is thinning. Matt Roloff's inability to see his grandchildren has been one of his greatest regrets while this family war has continued. In this instance at least, he was able to spend time with his grandchildren, Audrey and Jeremy. LPBW Matt and Amy Roloff lock horns in sneak peek. The trailers for Little People, Big World reveal that Amy and Matt Roloff grow heated during some scenes. Although they have moved on with other people, the ex-partners are still friendly and involved in each other's lives. Yet it is obvious that they irritate one another. TLC's Little People, Big World Season 25 is now airing. For viewers, this is a fantastic chance to stay up to date on all the happenings on Roloff Farms and beyond. Because it was just revealed that Tori and Zach Roloff will not be returning for any more episodes, this season is especially bittersweet. Matt Roloff's actions with the piece of Roloff Farms he first offered for sale are seen by Little People, Big World fans. Having failed to sell to either his sons or an outside buyer, Matt Roloff made the decision to convert that portion of the farm, which included the former Roloff family home, into a short-term rental area. Matt made a wise business decision thus far, and it is undoubtedly paying off. What begins as a cooperative effort for a worthy cause becomes a huge issue for Amy and Matt Roloff in the previews for the upcoming episode of Little People, Big World. Things like this help to explain why the two of them didn't make a good partnership and why they finally got divorced and moved on to other people. Once more, Amy and Matt Roloff team together for a charitable function. They do meet together for a good reason, but they quickly start to irritate one another. It's already problematic that everyone has agreed on a date for the gathering because Matt needs to plan it for a day when he doesn't have any visitors staying at the farmhouse. When discussing Amy Roloff in scenes from Little People, Big World, Matt Roloff is blunt. Amy can go from micromanager to dictator faster than I can, says Matt Roloff. The worst in these two seems to still be brought out by something for a good purpose, and viewers will witness more of this. Amy asserts that you can't have too many bosses and too many leaders. She has little trouble asserting herself and taking charge. That's just problematic because Matt Roloff feels the same way. Drama will undoubtedly abound as these two attempt to outmaneuver one another. LPBW Matt Roloff shares critical pumpkin season 2025 update. Matt Roloff, a famous face from Little People Big World, recently updated his fans on all the happenings leading up to pumpkin season on social media. The upgrade was deemed critical by Matt. So what does Roloff Farms Pumpkin Season 2024 have in store for fans? Roloff Farms is more than just Matt Roloff's house. It's a whole lot more. There are a lot of annual highlights, like pumpkin season, tours of the farm, and Matt turning part of that area into short-term rentals. During the fall, Roloff Farms welcomes many visitors who come to pick pumpkins. For many, it is an annual event they eagerly anticipate. Now that summer has passed and fall has arrived, many fans of Little People Big World are eagerly looking forward to this year's event. But Matt Roloff recently spilled the beans on some big news about this year's pumpkin season. So what was the celebrity's opinion on the matter? and crucial update for pumpkin season 2024 was recently shared by Matt Roloff with his numerous fans on social media. He went on to say that this season will be different because of a major change. So what was his prediction for the future? Matt Roloff recounts that he informed his Little People Big World followers that Roloff Farms would be closed for 4 weekends, or a grand total of 12 days, during this pumpkin season. If you want to be a part of it this year, Matt Roloff said to his fans to get tickets ASAP. Once Roloff Farms begins on October 4, there will be lots of other things to look forward to, according to Matt Roloff. There will supposedly be a stage where live musicians can perform, according to Matt. So that's another exciting thing happening this season. Everyone gets $20 for general entrance, and you can buy pumpkins by the pound. So you may expect to pay a premium for a heavier pumpkin. Also, there's a group wagon tour of the farm and public entry for $26, so there's definitely a good reason to do that. All of this, plus a food court with many vendors and a chance to meet Amy Roloff, will be available to attendees. No more today. What are you thinking about this gossip today? Let us know in the comments, and stay tuned by subscribing to our channel to get more updates like this. Thank you.